Hi, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about how you handle your unresponsive stakeholders or unreceptive stakeholders. Within this video, I'm going to cover a brief description about stakeholder engagement and how you understand what a stakeholder is and what role they play. Within the video, I will talk about how you can break down the barriers using good communication and seeing and trying to look through the eyes of your stakeholder and see their perspective, tailoring your methods so that you can approach and deal with those stakeholders who are distant. And then what engagement methods that you could use to bring them into the fold. Firstly, let's talk about stakeholder engagement. Now, effective stakeholder engagement is the cornerstone of successful projects. Management involves strategies to engage and ensure their support for project delivery and make sure you have their buy-in. The aim is to activate these stakeholders, enhancing their involvement in your project, helping you with the decision making and reduce risk associated with your delivery of the project. So really getting your stakeholders engaged is really important. So next is really understanding your stakeholders. Now, who are your stakeholders? Stakeholders are individuals or groups impacted by your project. They have a vested interest in your project or either to succeed or even fail. Remember that they include customers, employees, your engineers, whoever they may be, people who have a vested interest or an involvement within your project are stakeholders. Now, one of the things you need to understand about stakeholders, they have competing priorities, which means that they have other work, not just your project to do. And so therefore you as a project manager are responsible to manage that stakeholder to ensure that you prioritize your requirements against theirs and get a very happy balance. Now that's not easy, but it can be done. Next is some of the reasons why stakeholder might be unresponsive. Now, one is inadequate communication. There's a knowledge gap, or you are not approaching them in the right way or at the right time. There's some misunderstanding about what the project goal is and what the scope is and what their involvement is and how much of a role they have to play within your project. So there's a whole list of things. But in essence, by recognizing the diverse representatives and constraints of stakeholders, project managers can tailor engagement strategies to foster active participation and support. In essence, what that means is if you can understand the individual, how best to communicate with them and manage them, you will get their buy-in. So let me just quote a phrase. Effective communication is as stimulating as black coffee and just as hard to sleep after. Now, this is a statement that I've had said to me many occasions. However, if you put it into reality, it's very true. When you have effective communication with people, you really get their buy-in, their engagement, and people respond to you very positive. And therefore, the energy levels increase or your interaction with those people improves over time. So the phrase is really important. And the better you have that communication with individuals, the more responsive your stakeholders will be. Why does communication break down with your stakeholders? Now, firstly, there's unclear messages when they are attending meetings or sitting with you. They are getting the structures which are ambiguous, leading to misunderstanding and confusion. Another one is information overload. You're throwing so much information that people are just unable to take the information in, which causes frustration. Next one is a mismatch of communication. Now, here is different preference of modes of communication. Now, everybody likes to do communication different ways. I might like to do it by email. Some people like to do face-to-face. I personally prefer face-to-face. I think that's a lot more engaging, get things more done. But email has a place in it. So you need to make sure that whoever your stakeholder is, you align the best method of communication so that they feel more comfortable, more engaged, and therefore able to absorb the information and the requirements as a project manager. Now, an example here is email versus face-to-face. Now, email communication can be prone to misinterpretation due to lack of nonverbal cues, tone, and immediate feedback, whereas an email is very flat as overall. Therefore, having that balance between email and face-to-face can bridge the gap between eliminating those misunderstandings and bringing the stakeholder together. So next is trying to see project activities from your stakeholders' perspective. And ideally, use the analogy of looking through their eyes to determine your project, understanding their requirements, their challenges, so that you can understand how best to support them and how best they can support you deliver your project. An example here would be understanding your stakeholders' workload. They are stakeholders with other work, other priorities. You must recognize that the stakeholder have multiple priorities and commitments, which can impact their availability and responsiveness. Next is appreciate their work style. You've got early birds who start first thing in the morning. You've got night owls who like to work late in the afternoon. And you need to adapt to that. And as a project manager, you need to be very mindful of those things and making sure that you adapt your style to suit them as best as possible. Next is really embracing cultural differences, north-south divide. People talk about it. If you're doing global products, you'll find there's language barriers, different cultures, different ways of working. You've got time zones to manage. Taking all that into account when you manage your stakeholders is really key. And finally is empathy. Put yourself in the stakeholders' shoes to gain a deeper understanding of their perspective, their challenges and motivations. If you can understand that, you will appreciate their challenges and you can adjust your communication. You can adjust your approach to get the best into your stakeholder. Spend time with your stakeholders, understanding them, have some empathy towards their commitments, their challenges, which then will get their automatic buy-in. If you are constantly going, you must do it this time, without actually discussing with them, being the same going, what challenges you have, what can you do it, what's realistic, what's not, etc. Asking those realistic questions and getting them to give you a timeline that they can work to. Obviously, there's some negotiation you can do. You will get a considerable amount of better buy-in, and your stakeholders will probably most likely avoiding you and being more responsive to your needs. So next is really talking about how you tailor your communication towards your stakeholders. There are ways to do this, which in essence will help you determine and help you to bridge that gap between those non-responsive stakeholders as part of your project. Firstly is, really do a stakeholder analysis. Now, conduct a comprehensive analysis of stakeholders, their preferences, their communication styles, and key concerns. Once you understand those, you get a feel of how to best communicate with these people, and you tailor it to your stakeholder. One, I prefer everything over email. I don't want to be bothered face to face. Stakeholder number two, I actually want emails. I want you to call me, and I want to meet him face to face, whatever that might be. So at least you might know, and I prefer things to be followed up via email, whatever that might be. Have that stakeholder analysis so you understand what their needs are. Next one is customized messaging. When you are crafting emails, and one of the things I was very weak at when I first started was my emails were very generic, very specific to what I thought people wanted to hear. However, when the message got across an email, people misunderstood and it caused more problems than it actually fixed. So really look at your emails, how you draft that communication, how you say it is really key. Next is channel selection. And determine the most effective communication channels. Not everybody likes email. Not everybody likes face-to-face. Pick the best channel that suits that individual stakeholder. Next one is continuous feedback. Engage with your stakeholder on a regular basis and ask them feedback. Am I giving you the right information? Am I talking to you the right way? Are we communicating regularly enough or too much? Whatever that might be, adjust it accordingly. Have that continuous feedback. Continuously talk to these people. Continuously get that information, feeding back, saying, stakeholder A was email only. Actually, now they want to be spoken to. They want to meet face to face. And over time, it evolves. As within your project, you start building those bridges, you will find that you start having a lot more banter, a lot more things in common, and you'll break down a lot more barriers so that your stakeholders become more responsive to your needs. And then finally is consistency and transparency. Now, I can't stress this more than enough. If you are trying to, I don't like using the phrase, but you are trying to bullshit your way through this, it will not work. Be transparent, be very clear about what you are trying to do. Never assume that the person in front of you knows what you're talking about. Assume they don't, and be very detailed about what you're expressing. As you grow that rapport with the individuals, you will find that you can be less detailed orientated and give them the right information at the right time. However, initially start with as much detail, assuming they don't understand you and they don't understand what is needed. Can come across as patronizing sometimes, so just be careful how you handle that. Be very careful. Now I'm going to talk about some strategies that you could use to make sure that you don't have unresponsive stakeholders with your project, or at least try and avoid it or minimize it. Firstly is your project have a kickoff meeting. You will get to know your stakeholders. You have that open communication channel conversation, and you agree how you're going to progress forward and your frequency of meetings, your how best to communicate. This is where you start to engage with your first stakeholders and give them the opportunity to express how best to communicate. So really have that kickoff meeting, get people introducing themselves, talk to each other, and also get them to confirm how best they would like to be communicated to. Initiate the conversation early. As a project manager, think 3 steps ahead. We've got a deadline in a week. A couple of days before, maybe 4 days before, send in polite emails saying, guys, you've got X, Y, and Z that needs to be delivered by such and such date. Please, just as a reminder, just keep this on your radar and bring it up in your frequency meetings. Now, a simple reminder like that triggers people and go, oh, yes, I forgot to do that. And they will naturally progress. However, much of the time, miss their deadlines. Going aggressively here is not the option, in my opinion. You're going aggressively, you rub people up the wrong way. Immediately, they bring the shutters down and stop talking to you. What you need to do is really politely approach this, be respectful, be firm in your tone, but respectful at the same time, and inquire about the delay and offer support if needed. This is the key. Offer support if needed. If they've got other priorities within the project or they've been pulled off your project to do other work, you need to understand that. And you also need to build up rapport so that they tell you upfront, say, I'm not going to be able to deliver that this week because I've been told to do X, Y, and Z by somebody else. And therefore they can communicate and you can replan. So that's really important. Next is mid-project reviews. Have something at each milestone or phase, whatever you may have, so you can discuss it, what roadblocks, things you can learn from, and then adapt it to your next stage. And that's really, really important. You should be doing your lessons learned throughout your project, not right at the end. So this is a really good step. Now, when you're getting closer to your final stretch, this is where the pressure's on. Everybody's trying to deliver, and this is where everybody's busy. However, you must increase your follow-up here. This is where you must be continuing catching up with people, saying, all right, guys, what are you doing? I have found that face-to-face is the most effective. Obviously, that's not always possible. Make sure you get on your team calls, get your emails out there, get your comms out there, follow with a simple phone call, whatever it may be. On the final stretch of your project, people are running at 100 miles an hour, trying to get as much done to make sure they meet your deadline. So make sure you are giving them the time and effort to pick up the phone, talk to them, and make sure that you are supporting them throughout. Now, the final one is when you get to the project completion stage. Many project managers, they run off onto the next project. However, spend the time to express your gratitude and seek feedback from all of your stakeholders. This is more like the lessons learned. This is so key. As a project manager, do not forget that you are only as good as the people around you. If you do not give people credit for what they have helped you deliver, you will find that you will struggle to get stakeholder buy-in for future projects within your organization or wherever you go. And also ask for their feedback, because they could suggest better things. You can learn from so much more. And there's so much more that they can feed into your strategy, which will make you a better project manager. So next, I'm going to talk about how you can engage through inclusion. Now, what I mean by engage through inclusion is how you get people involved within your project by including them at the right time within your project so that they've got their input, they feel like they're wanted and feel like they're important as part of your project. So firstly, so a few methods. I have brainstorming meetings. Now, these brainstorming meetings are really important. You get groups together, have a diverse discussion about it with your stakeholders, collaborating and sharing ideas openly of how you're going to deliver a powerful tool. And as a project manager, you will learn a huge amount from others of how you can deliver your project successfully. Ultimately giving them the power to do stuff and not telling them what to do and giving the autonomy to do stuff is really important. And now, if you have an unresponsive stakeholder, actually participating and contributing to decision making with them really gets buy-in, and saying, I really need your input. You're important to, which they are important. Don't forget, as a project manager, again, I keep saying this, without others, you cannot deliver your project. So they are important and they need to be nurtured. So empowering your stakeholders is really important. Next one is an inclusive decision tree, a visual representation showing stakeholders' inputs being considered each decision point. And this is really important. Say, okay, decision, these are all the things that we're considering. Simple slide deck is enough to tell people what we're doing, which then gives people something to visualize and then hook onto, which helps you then deliver your project. Next is buy-in celebration. Now, if you've achieved something really good, go out there and celebrate it. A lot of people just move on to the next thing and forget in it. And I simply, in my time, I either just go out for lunch with guys or go to the pub, whatever it may be, whatever you do, or bring some chocolates or biscuits, whatever it is, celebrate the achievement and get your stakeholder buy-in. And then finally is 360 feedback loop. Make sure you are continuously feedbacking with your team and your stakeholders so that you've got a constant review of how you are doing things. If you aren't getting that feedback, you cannot improve things with your stakeholders, which is really key. So the final thing is really valuing your stakeholders' input. One of the things that I find in my industry or in many of the projects I've delivered is that a lot of project managers forget and actually devalue your stakeholder input within the project. That's really common, and I've really seen, especially when you've got a lot of pressure and a lot of aggressive timelines to meet, people forget that these people are going to help to deliver your project. Now, one thing about valuing their input is that you'll get better, improved product and service and quality of delivery as part of your project. It also enhances the customer satisfaction. If your stakeholders are you at the project manager, when you speak to your customer and you are delivering and succeeding, customer satisfaction is naturally increasing. And therefore, their perception of you and your team is growing. And if you are a customer, if they are your customer, they then start buying into your business. So it's all a win-win situation. However, if you do it wrong, it can all go the other way, where you are looked in a negative light and you are not good enough for them as a customer. That's really important. Next is it increases project efficiency. Now, if you've got input, what you'll find is as a project manager, you don't know everything. The more buy-in and more input you get, the better you are able to make decisions. This is really key, that you must get that input, as you do not have all the knowledge and you are not expected to have all the knowledge. So getting your stakeholders to give you the right information, whether that be a senior stakeholder, your engineers at the ground level, whatever it may be, they all have a very important part to play. And as a project manager, you need to juggle that through. And finally, it will bring together stronger stakeholder relationships. At the end of the day, having stronger stakeholder relationships means that there's a much more greater chance of you succeeding in your project. And to be honest, as a project manager, you will enjoy the delivery of delivering that project because you've got people buying in, feeding in. Everybody's got a positive attitude, and that is really key. Now, however, the downside is you will not always get that positive attitude, and you need to foster that input environment. Getting your stakeholders important is a vital element to your project, and getting it throughout the project is really key. So to conclude the video today, a few takeaways as a project manager to make sure you get your project's stakeholder buy-in, tailor your communication, adapt your messaging, your delivery to the stakeholder, and understand their background and the things that are challenging them, which will help you deliver your project. Next is show empathy, understand their challenges, their problems, their issues, so that they feel as if you care. As a project manager, you have to care. Remember that if you do not care, you will not get your stakeholders buy-in, and you are most likely going to fail or miss your deadlines because of that, the way you are approaching it. And finally, I would say involve your stakeholders throughout the whole journey. Make sure you're building that trust, getting that buy-in, and collaborating with them at all times so that they are feeling part of your team. So again, all these things can all be adopted, and you will have to adopt each one or change each one or tailor each one for every different project that you take on. However, the fundamental is keep talking, keep that communication flow going, and be there for your stakeholders. Be someone that they feel like they can approach, and that will automatically mean that your stakeholders become more responsive and more effective in giving you information. Now, thank you for listening to the video. I hope that was helpful. If you liked it, please click on the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.